These are my top 10 preps to get right now off of Amazon before tariffs make their prices skyrocket. I went through my order history and picked out some things that I thought were very relevant to preparedness that have worked well for me. These are all things I actually own, so that way I can recommend them from experience. So, the first item on this list is going to be drones. We know most drones are manufactured overseas, especially in China, and these tariffs are only going to make those prices go up. And in fact, everything you see here on the workbench is more expensive now than when I first ordered it, so that's quite an indicator. Now, personally, I have a Potensic Atom SE drone right here, which is relatively inexpensive, and it's under 250 grams, so it avoids some of those restrictions that are placed on larger drones. So this makes life a little bit easier. Of course, you need to look up all your laws and everything else regarding licensing and registration requirements for drones, but this one is affordable, it works well, it uses your smartphone in conjunction with a controller, and it has access to 4K video or photos or anything else. So you could use this in search and rescue operations or just perimeter surveillance or whatever else you might need it for during an emergency. And for the price, I find it very useful, but also something that's going to be likely more expensive here very soon. So drones are the first thing on this list. Specifically, that one I think is a good buy for how cheap it is and how well it has performed for me. So I will have links to everything that we're going to talk about on this list down in the description as well as in the pinned comment in case you're interested in picking some of these things up. And yes, those links will be affiliate links, which go to support the channel financially, which is greatly appreciated. Now, the second thing on this list, I made an entire video about this, and it's super useful, and I have it go off all the time, and that's going to be my HTZSAFE driveway alarm system. Now, this goes to work in conjunction with some solar panel powered motion sensors, which you place around your property or outside the front of your driveway or wherever you want to be aware or alerted of any movement. And it works based off of heat signatures as well, so that way you can designate vehicles or creatures or humans or whatever else it is you're more a little bit concerned about, right? And I find it to work very well. In fact, it's kind of annoying how well it works. It's very loud. It wakes me up in the middle of the night constantly because of deer or coyotes or anything else that's coming on the property. But at least I know exactly where things are and the fact that they're on my property. Whereas otherwise I would not have any kind of a heads up. These are wireless. They work very well for how far of a spread you actually get with them. And at the same time, you have different tones you can set for each one of the different motion sensors you place around your property, so you know exactly what part of the property there's motion at. So for perimeter defense and to be able to use this for how cheap these are, I think they're a really good deal. They're very easy to set up, and right now they're still inexpensive, but clearly made in China, so they're going to cost more here very soon, which is why I would definitely suggest checking something like this out. Now, the third thing on the list is going to be batteries. Just in general, batteries are almost all manufactured overseas. They're very inexpensive right now in comparison to what they could possibly be. Because of the different components that are used to make them and where they're manufactured, it's only reasonable to assume they're going to get more expensive because of these tariffs. And on Amazon, they even just have these packs of basic alkaline batteries that are really inexpensive. This is 48 AA batteries, and it's probably one of the cheaper ways to stock up on just backup batteries. These aren't necessarily high-end lithium batteries. These are just for your basic electronics, for your typical emergency preparedness kits when it comes to things like handheld radios or when it comes to things like flashlights or anything else that you're not super concerned about being very durable or having a lot of longevity in the sense of battery life. These do the job pretty well, and they're very cheap as of now. But all batteries in general are going to get more expensive if this whole trade war thing keeps moving forward in the way that it has been. So that's something I would definitely pick up now. So moving forward from there, I would say radios and radio-related equipment, specifically things like Baofengs, which are made in China, which are a very affordable way to get into a ham radio or a ham-capable radio. And of course, you're going to need licensing and everything else for that if you want to use these properly. But regardless, having them on hand for emergency purposes is worth it for how cheap they are right now, even if you can't actually use them for any type of broadcasting or sending signals or anything along those lines. If you want to use this to actually send a transmission, you're going to have to be licensed, but you can receive and listen in to other transmissions without that license. So it does give you some additional capabilities there without even having to worry about that. So for how cheap these are, I definitely think getting a few Baofengs is a good idea right now. But radio equipment in general, whether or not it's a power supply, whether or not it's an antenna, or whether or not it's auxiliary cable or whatever else you might need to get your radio and communications up and running, or just to maybe upgrade them from what they're currently capable of doing right now, those components are almost all explicitly made in China. So I would definitely get some of that stuff now before it becomes too pricey to actually invest in, and that's just my opinion. So let's move on from there. The next thing is going to be your power stations, especially your solar capable power stations like this EcoFlow River 2 Pro you see right here. Now, EcoFlow has been a longtime supporter of the channel. I always appreciate them helping me out with projects, but their power stations are good. And of course, there's many other power stations you could choose from on Amazon as well, but all of them pretty much exclusively are made in China. And of course, even the components there within are Chinese made electronic components. So they're batteries that have all of the things inside of them that you would need for your own personally built power station when it comes to a power inverter or a charge controller or any of those other things. And the panels themselves are often also made over in China. So there's a lot of things right now that if you want to get backup power and have access to that renewable energy, that you would want to purchase sooner than later if you're trying to avoid some of these additional prices based on tariffs. And I definitely recommend EcoFlow because I've had good experiences with their equipment. But like I said, there's plenty of other options out there as well. I would just make sure you have that capability, or at least if you're thinking about getting it, maybe saving some money by getting it ahead of time. So the next thing on the list is going to be very similar in many ways, but this is one of those car battery jump starters, and this one's a Baofeng, which I'm pretty sure that's how you say it, but regardless, I've had this on the channel before as well, because for the price, it works very well. I've had it jumpstart my truck in the past when it's been very cold outside, and this allows you to get your battery back up and running in an emergency roadside situation where you would otherwise have to jump your car using another vehicle. So this allows you to do that on your own without having to ask a stranger for help or having to deal with any of that. While at the same time, this can be used as a power bank too. So now you have a way to recharge your phone or any other USB devices. And of course, where's it made? You know where it's made, China. Say it with me now, China. So we know that these are going to get more expensive, and right now they're very useful, and these are one of the most practical things that a preparedness-minded person could have. Oh, a way to jumpstart your vehicle if your battery dies? Yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea, right? More so than 95% of the other stuff that we like to invest in. This thing is actually truly practical. So, battery pack jump starters, a good way to go as well. Now, Mylar bags and O2 absorbers is the next item on this list because the O2 absorbers themselves are generally made in China. Now, the Mylar bags are often made in the USA, right? And that's great. But the other thing to keep in mind is that they use components that are made overseas. So these might be made in the USA, but using aluminum from Canada, let's say. And we know that Canada tariffs have gone up recently too. So there's a lot of things that we have to consider when it comes to where these things are coming from, and not just where they're made, but where the components for them are imported from for them to be able to be made. So the Mylar bags likely to go up in price if these tariffs keep climbing, but the O2 absorbers definitely, because the majority of these are made in China, and these are required if you want your food to last as long as humanly possible while stored in these Mylar bags. So these are things I would stock up on for food storage purposes. Now, even if you don't have the food to store in them, you can just get the food later, but at least you'll have your... Somebody's here. Okay. At least then you'll have a way to actually store these things, right? Or store the food. I got a little sidetracked because this thing does work, right? Now, moving on from there, I think we all know for a fact that a huge majority of our footwear comes from overseas. And these boots are made in China. These are from Viktos. They're Jnny Combat winter boots. And honestly, I really like them. They're very warm, they're insulated. And out here in North Dakota, where we have extreme cold temperatures, they keep my feet warm and do a good job of having traction and being durable. And as you can see, I've worn them quite a bit. But they're made in China. So boots like this are going to get more expensive as time goes on. And if you want good quality shoes, but you can't afford some of the USA made stuff like from Red Wing or Danner, because even only parts of their product lines are made in the USA, and those parts tend to be the most expensive versions of their shoes. Well, getting good shoes now isn't the worst idea. And I think having some additional backup footwear on hand in case supply chains fall apart or logistics systems just explode overnight, you'll always have a backup pair of shoes, and good shoes are really hard to beat in an emergency situation. And I think it's overlooked quite often here in the preparedness community as being a vital prep. Shoes are important. I think so anywhere. When you wear a size 15, you have to be particular about what shoes you even have access to. So next on the list is going to be more fun, but also something that might be important one day depending on how things turn out. This tariff war could easily turn into a conventional war at some point, so you never know when you're going to need tactical gear. Now, if you want cheap or budget-friendly tactical gear, now's the time to get it because the majority of that stuff's made in China and it's going to cost you more and more. And not everybody needs top-of-the-line, high-end, expensive, made in the USA tactical gear, and I totally understand that. And this Cndr chest rig right here works perfectly fine for what it's intended to be used for. And for the average prepared civilian, somebody who's not actually going out and doing any of this stuff professionally, this is going to hold up decently enough and give you what you need at a very affordable price point. So if you're trying to get, nylon that's tactical, or if you're trying to get anything like holsters or anything like that that's just cheaper because it's not really your thing, but you want to have some access to this stuff just in case, well, Cndr is a decent brand for that, and it's not going to get any cheaper if these tariffs keep going up. So I like some of the Cndr stuff. I'm not against it by any means. I think that, there's a clear quality difference when you start comparing it to some of the higher end stuff, but will that quality difference matter for most people? Probably not. So just be aware of that. If you're trying to get the cheaper, more affordable tactical gear that's made overseas, it's going to get more expensive as this trade war goes on, and those tariffs are going to end up costing you more to get this lesser quality thing, which, by the way, that's probably some of the strategy there, right? Once you close that gap between the lower quality affordable thing and the higher quality less affordable thing, and then both of them are a little bit closer in price, then you start to question whether or not you want to just spend that extra money. Right? The strategy here. But regardless, what that also means is that for some people, that means being priced out completely, which is also unfortunate. So just something to keep in mind. And then the last thing on this list that we're going to talk about is over-the-counter medications. So for example, you got your Dayquil, your NyQuil, so your cold medicines, but you can apply this to, ibuprofen or aspirin or anything else like that. This stuff is going to get more expensive because so much of it is made overseas, or at the bare minimum uses ingredients that are made overseas, especially with your prescription medications and everything else. All that stuff is going to just go up in price. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. And you never know, like during an emergency, you might just get a cold, and a cold can take you out of the fight if you need to be in it. So if you have the medicine to try to get rid of those symptoms and try to keep yourself alert and alive during a stressful scenario, it could make the difference. So having good quality over-the-counter medications available to you during an emergency is a suggestion of mine, but also making sure you can afford to buy them and store them away during these very tumultuous times in an economic way isn't the worst idea either. So these are my top 10 things that I would be getting right now off Amazon to avoid tariff increases, which, like I said, these things are already more expensive than when I bought them. So that's already happening, but we don't know where that end is going to come. We don't know where that price point is going to be where they can no longer charge anymore and people will still buy these things. So there is a point of no return in some ways of going past a certain threshold of price increases when it comes to what people are willing to pay. But regardless, because we don't know where that's going to be, getting in before it's a problem is usually a better idea. Now, can I guarantee these things won't be cheaper a year from now? No, and in fact, I hope they are, because that would be better for everybody. But as of right now, I don't know what's going to happen a year from now either, and that's why I made this video, just to give you some ideas in case you're in that mindset of, hey, I want to get some things now before maybe I can't afford them. And these are some of the things that I would suggest if that's what you're concerned about. Of course, I'm always going to say, make sure you have water, make sure you have food, make sure you have decent shelter, or at least a plan of where to go if things fall apart. All those things are very basic, but very, very important. And then all this other stuff is additional supplemental emergency stuff that you want to make sure you have access to, right? And you might notice one thing on here that's not showing up on the table, and that's going to be first aid equipment. And the reason why it's not up here is because I generally don't suggest ordering that through Amazon, and I don't suggest ordering anything that's made or imported from overseas in that regard, because that's not something you want to risk your life with. You want to just make sure to get something high quality in that department. And luckily for a lot of the first aid companies that I work with, as well as the other first aid companies that are based here in the US, their products won't be overly affected by these tariffs. So there's still time, I guess, in that regard. Anything else you need from me at all, go to magicprepper.com. That's where you can find a lot of great information. You can find information about how to join a workshop I recently created. You can find information about gun builds and everything else that I have, listed on there. You also have information about how to join the Discord and network with others here in the community. And if you want to join the Subscribe Star to support the channel directly for $5 a month, there's perks related to that, which you can also find information on my website about there. So that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.